The morning sky above Zelara Prime burned red with the light of dying ships. Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the observation window of the USS Harmony and watched in horror as another Zelaran city disappeared in a flash of white fire. The beautiful crystal towers that had taken centuries to grow were gone in seconds, leaving only melted glass and smoke. "How many does that make?" asked Lisa Chang from the pilot's seat. Her voice was quiet, but Jake could hear the anger underneath. 7 cities in 4 hours, Ben Parker answered from his engineering station. He pulled up the readings on his screen and shook his head. "They're not even trying to capture anything. They're just destroying everything they see." Amy Rodriguez looked up from her communications console. "I'm getting more distress calls from the planet. The Zelarans are begging for help, but they don't have any weapons to fight back with. They never built armies or warships. They don't even understand what war means." Jake turned away from the window and looked at his crew. The USS Harmony was a diplomatic vessel, not a warship. They had 12 people on board, and no weapons stronger than a mining laser. Outside their ship, 67 alien warships were systematically destroying an entire civilization. The Krithian Empire had arrived 3 days ago without warning. Their ships were massive, each one over a kilometer long and covered in weapon batteries. Admiral Vextar, their commander, had sent one message to the Zelarans: surrender completely and become slaves, or die. He gave them 72 hours to decide. The Zelarans were a peaceful people who looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and large eyes. They spent their time creating art, growing crystal cities, and exploring the mysteries of their world. They had never hurt anyone and couldn't understand why someone would want to hurt them. "Captain, I'm getting another transmission from the planet," Amy said. "It's from Thernali, the leader of their council." "Put it through," Jake ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was tired and scared. "Please, any ship that can hear this message. We are dying. Our children are hiding in caves while our cities burn. We have no soldiers, no weapons, no way to fight these monsters. If there is any mercy left in the galaxy, please help us." Jake closed his eyes. He had been a diplomat for 15 years, traveling between worlds and helping different species solve their problems with words instead of weapons. He had never felt so helpless. "Captain," Ben said quietly, "we have to do something." "What can we do?" Jake asked. "We're one small ship against their entire fleet. They have enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds." Lisa turned in her chair to face him. "We can't fight them, but we can call for help. Earth needs to know what's happening here." Jake nodded slowly. The Human Colonial Alliance had strict rules about getting involved in alien wars, but this wasn't a war. This was genocide. The Krithians weren't trying to conquer Zelara Prime. They were trying to wipe out every living thing on it. "Amy, open. A channel to Terra Station. Priority Alpha." Amy's fingers flew over her console. "Channel open, Captain." Jake took a deep breath. What he was about to do would change everything. "Terra Station, this is Captain Jake Morrison aboard the USS Harmony. Code Crimson. Innocent civilians under systematic extermination, requesting immediate intervention." The response came back in seconds. "Harmony, this is Admiral Rick Stone. Confirm Code Crimson." "Confirmed, Admiral." "The Krithian Empire is destroying Zelara Prime. They're killing everyone. Men, women, children. The Zelarans have no way to defend themselves." There was a long pause. Then Admiral Stone's voice came back and it sounded different. Harder. "Morrison, get your people to safety. Help is coming." Jake stared at the communications console. Admiral Stone had been his commanding officer years ago, back when Jake was young enough to think that diplomacy could solve every problem. Stone was a good man, but he was also a realist. He knew that sometimes talking wasn't enough. "How long until help arrives?" Jake asked. 48 hours, Stone replied. "Can you keep the Zelarans alive that long?" Jake looked out the window. Again. Another city was burning. In 48 hours, there might not be any Zelarans left to save. "We'll try," he said. The transmission ended, and Jake's crew looked at him with questions in their eyes. What do we do now, Captain? Lisa asked. Before Jake could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Ben's console lit up with warning. Lights. 3 Crithian ships are heading our way, he announced. They're moving fast. Jake felt his stomach drop. The Crithians must have detected their transmission to Earth. Now they were coming to make sure no witnesses survived to tell the galaxy what happened at Zelara Prime. Lisa, get us out of here, Jake ordered. Where do we go? She asked, her hands already moving over the flight controls. Anywhere but here, Jake replied. We need to stay alive long enough for help to arrive. The USS Harmony turned and accelerated away from the Crithian fleet, but Jake knew they couldn't run forever. Their ship was fast, but the Crithian vessels were faster. It was only a matter of time before they were caught. Amy, try to contact any Zelaran ships that might still be flying. We need to warn them that help is coming. Most of their ships are just cargo vessels and passenger transports, Amy replied. They're not built for combat. Neither are we, Jake said grimly. But sometimes you have to fight with what you have. As the USS Harmony raced through space with enemy ships in pursuit, Jake thought about Admiral Stone's words. Help is coming. But what kind of help could Earth send that would make a difference against the Crithian Empire? The human colonial alliance had always been careful to appear weak to other alien civilizations. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and solved disputes peacefully. Most aliens saw humans as useful but harmless, good negotiators and merchants, but not warriors. Jake hoped that was about to change. On the planet below, millions of Zelarans were hiding in caves and underground shelters waiting for death to find them. Their beautiful world was being destroyed by creatures who saw them as nothing more than obstacles to be removed. But somewhere in space, human ships were moving. Admiral Stone had activated something called Protocol 7, and across human territory the real fleet was waking up. The Crithians thought they had brought hell to Zelara Prime. They were about to learn what hell really looked like when it wore a human face. Jake Morrison didn't know it yet, but his desperate call for help had just started the largest space battle in galactic history. And when it was over, every alien civilization would understand that humanity was not the weak, peaceful species they pretended to be. The USS Harmony continued to run through the darkness, carrying the hope of an entire world. Behind them, the Crithian ships grew closer. But ahead of them, beyond the edge of the solar system, other ships were coming, ships that had been waiting in the shadows for 30 years, preparing for exactly this moment. The hunt was about to begin. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled as he watched another Zelaran city turn to glass. The weak creatures on the planet below had 24 hours left to surrender, but he doubted any of them would survive that long. His ships were having too much fun destroying their crystal towers. Admiral, his communications officer called out, we're detecting new ships entering the system. Vextar turned to look at the tactical display. 20 small vessels had appeared at the edge of the system, moving slowly towards Zelara Prime. The ships looked old and poorly maintained, like the kind of cargo vessels that carried supplies between minor worlds. What species? He asked. Humans, sir. They appear to be converted civilian ships, some kind of rescue fleet. Vextar laughed. He had read the intelligence reports about humans. They were traitors and diplomats, good at talking but weak in battle. Their ships were slow and lightly armed. They posed no threat to the mighty Crithian Empire. How amusing, he said. The humans think they can save these pathetic creatures. Send 12 destroyers to deal with them. Make it quick and painful. I want the galaxy to see what happens to those who interfere with Crithian business. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan watched the Crithian ships approaching on her main screen. Her vessel, the Defiant Dream, looked like an old merchant ship that had seen better days. The hull was scratched and dented. The weapon mounts appeared to be simple mining lasers, and the engines seemed barely capable of moving the ship through space. Behind her followed 19 other human vessels. They looked just as pathetic, converted freighters, old passenger liners, and worn-out mining ships. Any alien looking at them would see exactly what they were supposed to see. A desperate rescue mission mounted by civilians who had no idea what they were getting into. Kate smiled as she watched the 12 Crithian destroyers racing toward her. fleet. Each enemy ship was 3 times the size of her largest vessel and carried enough weapons to destroy a space station. To any reasonable observer, the humans were about to be slaughtered. Incoming transmission from the lead Crithian ship. Her communications officer reported. Kate nodded. Put it through. A harsh alien voice filled the bridge. Human vessels, you are interfering in Crithian military operations. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Kate picked up her microphone and smiled. Crithian ships, this is Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan of the Human Colonial Alliance. We are here on a humanitarian mission to evacuate civilians. We have no quarrel with you. The alien voice laughed. Foolish humans. You have no understanding of what you face. We are the Crithian Empire. We have conquered 47 worlds. Your pathetic little ships are no match for our destroyers. You might be surprised, Kate replied calmly. The transmission cut off, and Kate turned to her crew. Her tactical officer, Commander Ray Thompson, was watching the enemy ships approach, with professional interest. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Carol West, had her hands hovering over controls that the Crithians couldn't even imagine. Range to target? Kate asked. 30,000 kilometers in closing, Ray replied. They're moving in standard attack formation. Looks like they plan to destroy us quickly and get back to bombing the planet. Kate nodded. The Crithians were arrogant, which was exactly what she had hoped for. They saw 20 weak human ships and assumed an easy victory. They had no idea that Admiral Stone had been preparing for this moment for 30 years. All ships, this is Sullivan, she broadcast to her fleet. Enemy ships are within range. Execute Plan Alpha. Acknowledged, came the replies from 19 ship captains who had trained their entire careers for this moment. Kate watched as the Crithian destroyers closed to weapons range. Their plasma cannons were charging, preparing to turn her ships into scrap metal. The enemy commander probably thought this would be over in minutes. He was right, but not in the way he expected. Drop the masks, Kate ordered. Across the human fleet, false hull plating fell away like old skin. The scratched and dented exteriors had been carefully crafted illusions, hiding the truth underneath. The Defiant Dream revealed itself as a heavy battlecruiser, its real armor gleaming and its weapon systems coming online with deadly precision. The old passenger liner Peaceful Journey deployed fighter squadrons from hidden hangar bays. The mining vessel Golden Prospect opened weapon ports that contained particle beam arrays, powerful enough to cut through planetary crust. Every ship in the human fleet transformed from helpless civilian vessel to deadly instrument of war. Sci-Fi, Crithian destroyer captains had exactly 3 seconds to understand what was happening before the humans opened fire. Kate watched the tactical display as 20 human warships unleashed hell on 12 unsuspecting enemies. Railguns fired projectiles at incredible speeds, punching through Crithian armor like paper. Particle beams sliced through enemy hulls, causing explosions that lit up space like new stars. Missile salvos tracked their targets with impossible accuracy, finding weak points that should have been impossible to detect. The 12 Crithian destroyers were completely destroyed in less than 30 seconds. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in shock. His destroyers were gone, completely gone. The energy readings from the human weapons were impossible. No civilian ships could carry that kind of firepower. Sir, his tactical officer said in a shaking voice, the human ships are showing military-grade armor and weapons. Their energy output exceeds anything in our database. Vextar felt something he had not experienced in 20 years of conquest. Fear. But he pushed it down. He commanded 67 warships, each one capable of destroying cities. Even if the humans had somehow hidden their true strength, numbers would tell in the end. All ships, he ordered, attack formation. Destroy those human vessels. Show them what happens when they challenge the Crithian Empire. Kate Sullivan watched as the entire Crithian fleet began moving toward her position. 67 massive warships against 20 human vessels. The odds looked impossible, but Kate had read the intelligence reports. She knew exactly what those Crithian ships could do, and more importantly, she knew what they couldn't do. All ships, Prepare for full engagement, she broadcast. Remember, we only need to hold them for 6 hours. Help is coming. Her tactical officer looked at her with concern. Commander, we're outnumbered more than 3 to 1. Can we really hold that long? Kate smiled grimly. Ray, those Krithian ships are built to fight other aliens. They've never faced humans before. They have no idea what we're capable of when we're properly motivated. She opened a channel to all her ship captains. Listen up, people. Down on that. Planet are millions of innocent civilians who are depending on us. Children are hiding in caves while their cities burn. We're the only thing standing between them and complete genocide. I don't care how many ships they have. We hold the line until reinforcements arrive, no exceptions. The responses came back immediately. Understood, Commander. We're with you. Let's show these bastards what humans can do. As the Krithian fleet approached, Kate thought about the civilians on Zelara Prime. Dr. Sam Hughes and his team were down there somewhere, trying to evacuate as many people as possible. Every minute her fleet could buy them meant more lives saved. The first Krithian ships opened fire, and space filled with deadly energy. Kate's fleet responded with precision strikes that found weak points in enemy armor. The real battle was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been hiding a terrible secret. They had been pretending to be weak while building the most advanced military force in known space, and now, with innocent lives at stake, they were about to reveal the truth. The trap was set, and the Krithians were walking right into it. The space around Zelara Prime became a battlefield unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 67 Krithian warships attacked 20 human vessels in the largest space battle in centuries. Energy beams crossed the darkness like deadly lightning, and explosions lit up the void between worlds. Admiral Vextar commanded his fleet from the bridge of his massive flagship, the Death's Edge. The ship was 2 kilometers long and carried enough weapons to destroy an entire moon. Around him, his other warships fired everything they had at the human fleet, but the humans were fighting like nothing he had ever encountered before. Captain Alex Bennett's flagship, the Knight's Edge, moved through the Krithian formation like a blade, cutting through cloth. The human ship was smaller than most Krithian vessels, but it fought with precision that seemed impossible. Every shot it fired found its target. Every movement put it exactly where it needed to be. How are they doing this? Vexitar demanded. His tactical officer was staring at his screens in confusion. Sir, their movements are perfectly coordinated. It's like they can predict where we're going to attack before we even fire. Their targeting systems are hitting weak points we didn't even know we had. Commander Maya Lopez sat at her station aboard the Knight's Edge and watched the battle unfold on her screens. She was the tactical officer, responsible for coordinating attacks against the enemy fleet. But she wasn't working alone. Every human ship in the battle was connected through quantum communication links that allowed them to share targeting data instantly. 3 Krithian cruisers moving to flank us, she reported to Captain Bennett. I'm sending their positions to the Thunder Bay and the Storm Runner. Acknowledged, came the replies from the other human ships. Within seconds, the flanking attack was broken up by coordinated strikes from multiple directions. The Krithians had never faced an enemy that could fight as a single organism. They were used to ship-to-ship combat where each vessel fought alone. The human fleet fought as one mind with 20 bodies, and it was devastating. But the numbers were still against them. For every Krithian ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. The human ships were taking damage, and their crews were getting tired. Then disaster struck. The human cruiser Retribution's Dawn, commanded by Captain Dan Miller, took a direct hit from 3 Krithian dreadnoughts at once. The ship's armor cracked, and atmosphere began venting into space. Emergency alarms blared throughout the vessel as the crew fought to save their ship. Admiral Vextar saw the damaged human vessel and smiled. Finally, one of them was vulnerable. He ordered 5 of his best ships to move in and finish it off. The humans would have to surrender or watch their comrades die. He had no idea what Captain Dan Miller was about to do. Dan Miller stood on his bridge and looked at the damage reports. His ship was dying. The hull was cracked in 3 places. The engines were failing and half his weapons were offline. In 10 minutes, the Retribution's Dawn would be nothing but floating scrap. The 5 Crythian ships were closing in, their weapons charging for the killing blow. Dan could try to run, but his engines were too damaged to escape. He could surrender, but he knew the Crythians would torture his crew before killing them, or he could do something that would make the enemy remember this battle forever. "All hands, this is the captain," Dan announced over the ship's communication system. "Abandon ship, get to the escape pods now, that's an order." His crew looked at him in confusion. "Sir, we can still fight," his weapons officer protested. "Not anymore," Dan replied, "but we can still make them pay. Go now." As his crew evacuated, Dan walked to his command chair and activated a sequence that few people in the galaxy even knew existed. The ship's antimatter containment system began to destabilize in a carefully controlled way. The Retribution's dawn was about to become a weapon unlike anything the Crythians had ever seen. The 5 enemy ships moved closer, thinking they were about to capture or destroy a helpless human vessel. They had no idea they were flying into the heart of a miniature star. Captain Dan Miller sat in his command chair and watched the Crythian ships approach. He thought about his family back on Earth, about the Zelaran children hiding in caves on the planet below, and about the price of protecting innocence in a hostile galaxy. "Come on then," he said quietly. "Let's see how much hell you can handle." The Retribution's dawn exploded in a ball of antimatter fire that consumed everything within 50,000 kilometers. The 5 Crythian ships disappeared instantly, and 3 more were damaged so badly they could no longer fight. Space itself seemed to burn as the explosion expanded and then slowly faded. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in horror. 8 of his ships were gone, destroyed by a single human vessel that had turned itself into a bomb. The energy readings from the explosion were beyond anything in Crythian science. "What manner of creatures are these?" he whispered. His question was answered when new ships began appearing at the edge of the system. But these weren't more converted civilian vessels. These were warships that made his own fleet look like toys. Admiral Rick Stone's flagship, the supercarrier Endurance, emerged from hyperspace with 37 escort vessels. The Endurance was 4 kilometers long and carried enough fighters to darken a sun. Its escort ships were purpose-built instruments of war, their hulls black as the void and their weapons arrays glowing with barely contained energy. These were not disguised merchant ships. These were the vessels of the human colonial navy, and they had come to end the battle. On the planet below, Dr. Sam Hughes crouched in a crystal cave with 2,000 Zelaran refugees. The cave was deep enough to protect them from the orbital bombardment, but they could still hear the explosions echoing through the rock. "The children are frightened," said Thernali, the Zelaran council leader. Her silver skin was pale with worry, and her large eyes reflected the fear of her entire species. Sam looked at the Zelaran children huddled against their parents. They were innocent beings who had never known war until 3 days ago. Now their world was burning and aliens were fighting above their heads for the right to determine their future. "The humans who came to help us," Thernali continued, "they fight with such fury. Why do they care what happens to us?" Sam thought about how to answer. He was a marine biologist, not a soldier, but he had served in the colonial navy before becoming a scientist. He knew what drove humans to fight so hard for people they had never met. "Because someone has to," he said finally. "Because if good beings don't stand up to monsters, then monsters win. And humans decided a long time ago that we'd rather die fighting than live knowing we let innocents suffer." Above them, the battle was reaching its climax. The real human colonial navy had arrived, and Admiral Vextar was about to learn why humanity had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. The humans had not brought a rescue fleet to Zelara Prime. They had brought an execution squad, and they intended to make sure that every Crythian ship that had participated in the attack on innocent civilians would pay the ultimate price. The galaxy was about to witness the true face of human warfare, and it would change everything forever. Admiral Vextar watched in growing terror as more human ships continued to appear from the darkness of space. What had started as a simple punishment mission against weak humans had become a nightmare beyond his worst fears. The vessels emerging from hyperspace were not the converted civilian ships his intelligence reports had described. These were warships built for one purpose: destroying enemies completely. The supercarrier Endurance dominated the battlefield like a moving city of death. Its fighter bays opened and released clouds of small attack craft that moved like angry insects. Behind it came massive dreadnoughts that made Krithian battleships look like children's toys. Weapon platforms the size of space stations deployed arrays that made space itself bend with energy. "Sir," his tactical officer said in a voice barely above a whisper, "our sensors are detecting over 300 additional human vessels approaching from multiple directions. They're surrounding us." Vextar realized with horrible clarity that he had walked into a trap. The human fleet wasn't responding to his attacks randomly. They had been herding his ships into a specific formation, positioning them exactly where they wanted them. Every move his fleet had made had been predicted and planned for. Admiral Rick Stone stood on the bridge of the Endurance and studied the tactical display showing the Krithian fleet. For 30 years he had prepared for this moment. Humanity's first contact with alien civilizations had been peaceful, but Stone knew that somewhere in the galaxy were species that would see humans as nothing more than resources to be harvested or obstacles to be removed. The Krithian Empire was exactly the kind of threat he had been preparing to face. "All ships, this is Admiral Stone," he broadcast to the human fleet. "Execute Operation Judgment. No enemy vessel escapes. No enemy vessel survives. Make them understand what happens when innocents are harmed." Commander Julia Ross led her fighter squadron away from the Endurance in a coordinated strike that tore through Krithian defensive screens like they were made of paper. Her pilots flew with skill that seemed impossible to their enemies, dancing between plasma bursts and antimatter torpedoes as if they could see the future. Lieutenant Pete Davis rolled his fighter through a barrage of enemy fire and launched missiles at a Krithian cruiser. "Target hit," he reported as the enemy ship's weapon systems exploded. "That's another one that won't be bombing any more planets." Captain Megan Clark dove her squadron through a formation of Krithian destroyers, her pilots working together like parts of a single machine. "Remember," she called to her wing, "every ship we destroy is one less that can hurt innocent people. Make every shot count." The human fighters moved with precision that terrified the Krithian gunners. They seemed to know exactly where enemy weapons would fire before the triggers were pulled. Krithian ships that had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves helpless against small human attack craft that struck like lightning and disappeared into the darkness. But the fighters were only the beginning. Admiral Stone activated the Prometheus Array, a network of quantum-linked targeting, computers that connected every human ship in the battle. The system allowed the entire fleet to fight as a single organism, sharing targeting data and coordinating attacks with inhuman precision. The Krithian fleet, still thinking in terms of individual ship combat, was systematically dismantled by coordinated strikes that hit every vulnerable point simultaneously. 57 enemy vessels faced 300 human warships that fought with the coordination of a single mind. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Admiral Vexatar watched, his fleet die around him. Ships that had terrorized entire star systems were being torn apart by weapons they couldn't understand. His captains, veterans of 47 conquests, were calling for help in voices filled with panic. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "the humans are jamming all our long-range transmissions. No word of this battle can reach the Empire." Vextar finally understood. The humans hadn't just come to save Zelara Prime. They had come to send a message, and they were making sure that he and his entire fleet would be the message, not the messengers. His flagship shuddered as human weapons found their mark. The Death's Edge, which had destroyed 3 planetary capitals, was being systematically taken apart by coordinated fire from 7 human vessels. His shields failed, his weapons went offline, and his engines began to die. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 62 ships. Only 5 vessels remain operational, and they're all heavily damaged." Vextar looked at the tactical display one last time. The human fleet surrounded his remaining ships like predators around wounded prey. There would be no escape, no mercy, no survivors to carry word back to the Empire. He finally understood what he had encountered. These weren't the weak traders and diplomats his intelligence reports had described. These were beings who had been preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful. They had built the most advanced military force in the galaxy and hidden it in the shadows, waiting for someone to give them a reason to reveal it. The Crithian Empire had given them that reason. On the planet below, Dr. Sam Hughes emerged from the crystal caves with 12,000 Zelaran refugees. The ancient species looked up at the battle raging in their sky, watching flashes of light that marked the death of ships and the end of the Crithian threat. His team had worked without rest for 3 days, evacuating civilians to hidden shelters throughout the planet's underground cave systems. Marine biologist Claire Watson had organized medical care for the wounded. Explosives expert Tony Rivera had sealed cave entrances to protect refugees from bombardment. Xenobiologist Dr. Linda Foster had communicated with Zelaran leaders to coordinate the evacuation. Together, they had saved 40,000 innocent lives. Thurn Ali, the Zelaran council leader, stood beside Sam and watched the lights in the sky begin to fade. "The battle is ending," she said quietly. "Your people have won." Sam nodded, but his expression was sad. "Yes, but at a terrible cost. We revealed what we really are. The galaxy will never see us the same way again." "What are you?" Thurn Ali asked. "We thought humans were peaceful traders and diplomats." Sam looked at the Zelaran children emerging from the caves, their large eyes wide with wonder at seeing the sky again. "We are whatever we need to be to protect innocence. We tried being peaceful. But when peaceful doesn't work, we become something else." Above them, the last Crithian ship exploded in silent fire. Admiral Vextar died with his flagship, never fully understanding that he had been chosen to deliver humanity's message to the galaxy. The message was simple: harm innocence, and humanity will find you. And when they do, there will be no mercy, no escape, and no survivors. The Battle of Zelara Prime was over. The Crithian invasion fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single enemy vessel had escaped to carry word back to their empire. But the real war was just beginning. Across the galaxy, other predator species would soon learn that humanity had revealed its true nature. The beings they had dismissed as harmless traders had shown themselves to be the most dangerous predators in known space. And they were watching, always watching, waiting for the next species that thought it could prey on the innocent without consequences. The galaxy was about to become a much more dangerous place for those who harmed others, and a much safer place for those who could not defend themselves. The silence after battle was deeper than the void between stars. Where once 67 Crithian warships had terrorized Zelara Prime, now only drifting debris remained. The human fleet moved through the wreckage like ghosts, their weapons powered down but their sensors scanning for any sign of life. There was none. Captain Jake Morrison brought the USS Harmony alongside Admiral Stone's massive flagship, the Endurance. Looking at the supercarrier up close, Jake finally understood how badly he had misjudged humanity's capabilities. The ship was 4 kilometers of pure military power, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and armor that could withstand the heat of stars. "Permission to come aboard, Admiral," Jake requested over the communication channel. "Granted, Captain," Stone replied. "Bay 7 is open for you." As Jake's small diplomatic vessel docked with the enormous warship, he thought about everything that had changed in just 4 days. When he had sent that desperate message to Earth, he had been hoping for a rescue mission. What he got was a demonstration of military might that would reshape the galaxy. The docking bay of the Endurance was larger than some space stations Jake had visited. Hundreds of fighters were lined up in perfect rows, their pilots performing maintenance checks with military precision. Marine units in combat armor moved with purpose through the corridors, their weapons clean and their faces hard. Admiral Stone met Jake at the airlock. The older man looked exactly the same as he had 15 years ago, but his eyes held a weight that Jake had never seen before. "How many civilians did we save?" Stone asked immediately. 40,000 Zelarans are safe in the underground caves," Jake replied. "Dr. Hughes and his team managed to evacuate them before the worst of the bombardment." Stone nodded slowly. "And the cost?" Jake understood what he was asking. We lost the Retribution's Dawn and her captain. 17 other ships took heavy damage. But Admiral, we revealed everything. The entire galaxy now knows what humanity is really capable of. Good, Stone said quietly. It's time they knew. They walked through the corridors of the Endurance toward the bridge. Jake saw things that made him realize how little he had understood about his own species. Weapon systems that belonged in science fiction stories. Armor plating that could survive the explosion of stars. Technology that was decades ahead of anything other civilizations possessed. How long have we been building ships like this? Jake asked. 30 years, Stone replied. Ever since first contact with alien civilizations. We hoped we would never need them, but we prepared for the worst while working for the best. On the bridge, Jake met the officers who had planned and executed the most decisive military victory in galactic history. Commander Julia Ross was debriefing her fighter pilots. Captain Alex Bennett was coordinating damage reports from the fleet. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan was organizing the cleanup operations. These were not the diplomats and traders that other species thought they knew. These were warriors who had trained their entire lives for the day when humanity would need to show its true face. Captain Morrison, Admiral Stone said, I want you to prepare a report for the colonial government. Tell them exactly what happened here. Every detail. The galaxy needs to understand that this was not an accident or a lucky victory. This was the result of careful planning and preparation. Jake nodded. What happens now, Admiral? The Crithian Empire will want to know what happened to their fleet. Stone smiled grimly. The Crithian Empire will get exactly the message we intended to send. No survivors means no witnesses. They'll know their fleet was destroyed, but they won't know how, or by whom. They'll have to guess, and that uncertainty will make them cautious. On the planet below, Dr. Sam Hughes stood in the ruins of the Zelaran capital city and watched human engineering teams working alongside Zelaran crystal shapers to rebuild what had been destroyed. The cooperation between the two species was remarkable. To witness, Claire Watson, his medical officer, was setting up treatment centers for injured Zelarans. Her gentle manner and professional skill had won the trust of beings who had never seen humans before the attack. Tony Rivera was using his explosives expertise in reverse, carefully removing debris and clearing areas for reconstruction. The same skills he used to destroy enemy fortifications were now being used to save Zelaran architecture. Dr. Linda Foster worked with Zelaran scientists to understand their crystal-growing technology. The collaboration was producing new building techniques that would make the rebuilt cities even more beautiful than before. But the most important work was being done by the children. Human and Zelaran children played together in the temporary refugee camps, their laughter echoing through caves that had recently been filled with fear. They shared games and stories, learning each other's languages and customs. In their innocent friendship, the future of both species could be seen. Thernali, the Zelaran council leader, found Sam standing on a hill overlooking the main refugee camp. The ancient being's silver skin had regained some of its natural glow now that the danger had passed. Your people saved us, she said simply, but you also changed us. We can never return to the way we were before. Sam nodded. The galaxy is not a safe place for purely peaceful species. We learned that lesson long ago. Now you must decide what kind of people you want to become. Will you teach us? Thernali asked. Will you show us how to protect ourselves without losing our souls? Before Sam could answer, a new voice spoke behind them. Admiral Stone had come down to the planet to see the results of the battle for himself. That depends, the Admiral said, on whether you're willing to pay the price. Becoming protectors means being willing to become terrible when necessary. It means training for war while hoping for peace. It means sacrificing your innocence so that others can keep theirs. Thernali looked at the Admiral with her large, intelligent eyes. What is the alternative? The alternative is what almost happened to your people, Stone replied. Extinction at the hands of those who see kindness as weakness. The Zelaran leader was quiet for a long moment, watching human and Zelaran children playing together in the Yarir distance. When she spoke again, her voice was firm with resolve. Then teach us. Show us how to become guardians like you. We have seen what happens to the innocent when there is no one to protect them. Admiral Stone nodded slowly. Very well. But understand this. Once you start down this path, there is no going back. You will never again be the purely peaceful people you were. You will become something harder, something that can fight monsters and win. We understand, Thernali said. Better to be guardians with blood on our hands than victims with pure souls. 6 months later, the galaxy had begun to understand the new reality. The Terran Colonial Alliance revealed the existence of the Silent Fleet, 300 warships that had been patrolling the darkness between stars for 30 years, unseen and undetected. Species that had dismissed humanity as harmless traitors suddenly realized they had been sharing space with apex predators who had chosen to hunt in the shadows. The Crithian Empire, learning of their fleet's complete destruction, withdrew from 3 sectors rather than risk human retaliation. But the greatest change occurred on worlds like Zelara Prime, where innocent species began to understand that peace could only exist when good beings were willing to become terrible in its defense. The galaxy slept more safely now, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, human ships patrolled the void. They carried a simple message to anyone who would harm the innocent. We are here, we are watching, and we remember what you did to those who could not fight back. Humanity had revealed its true nature at last. They were not the weak traitors other species had believed them to be. They were guardians, protectors, and when necessary, angels of vengeance who would cross the galaxy to defend those who could not defend themselves. The predators of the galaxy had learned a new fear, the wrath of those who protect the innocent, and in that fear, peace finally had a chance to grow.